All right. Hi, everyone. CederNet here with another update from the Avalanche Ecosystem. However, today I have someone very special with me, and we're not discussing a new project, at least not as far as I know, but I don't think so. Omer Demirel, welcome. Maybe you would like to give us a little introduction about yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Omer. So I'm a computational scientist by training and a data analytics consultant by profession. I studied computer science and physics in Turkey, and then I did a master's degree in computational sciences in Germany. And then finally, I moved to Zurich to do a PhD in computer science, focusing on parallel computing, image processing, and some numerical analysis. That's basically let's say my background. With crypto, I think I would say I started initially in early 2011 during my PhD studies. But back then, I was really interested in basically, I didn't really understand the concept that much, and I didn't probably pay too much attention. So I just wanted to, I heard about this magic internet money called Bitcoin, and I wanted to basically understand and see if I could mine some. But back then, I only had a laptop and access to the university cluster, so laptop didn't work. I briefly tried the university cluster, but then I wasn't. I was a bit scared that I could get myself in trouble, so I stopped that. And I would say probably around this time in 2017, I got interested in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrencies again. And since then, I've been basically following the whole field quite closely.
Yeah.
And how about you?
Yeah. So hi everyone. My first name is Chris. You're welcome to know that. My background is in management of innovation. That's my master's degree. I studied it in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Before that, I did business administration, international business administration. I've worked briefly in hardware and a hardware company in the services department. Then went to one of the big four accounting firms doing in their Salesforce practice, and mostly focused on sales enablement throughout it. However, because the Salesforce thing was a bit too much IT architecture and a bit too little talking to salespeople, I now switched recently at the start of this year to another global IT consulting company, and there I'm in the marketing department, but bridging their sales and marketing, if you will. I first heard about Bitcoin, I feel like in 2012 or so. Just on the internet forums, they talked about this magical internet money that you can earn if you just turn on your dad's laptop for a day. But back then, it was part of basically a conversation about how to buy people buying drugs online or hiring killers or so. So I was like, okay, so maybe it's a bit risky to use my dad's computer for that, and also what's the utility for it. But then, of course, throughout the years, it climbed, and in 2017, I was studying in Japan. One of my friends had some Bitcoin. It was worth $200 at that point, maybe. I was like, wow, that's much more expensive than it was when I first heard about it. Seems crazy high. You should sell it. That's why you never take any financial advice from me. Don't even ask me. Don't come with those questions. But yeah, I ended up also doing a course in Japan about climate and business, and decided to focus on Bitcoin because, of course, it takes a lot of energy input. But through that essay, basically, I started researching, and I got into contact with proof of stake and all the other solutions we have for scalability. Also, somehow started following Emin on Twitter, and I remember he was always talking about the AVA token. AVA solves this, AVA solves that, and always wondering when can we buy it or where can we buy it. And at some point, got lucky enough to get into the pre-sale, and then I think at the start of this year, when Pangolin launched and so much more interest suddenly came into the AVAX ecosystem, that's when it really started for me as well with the channel. Omer, and I realized I talked about AVAX and you haven't yet, how you got into that.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think mine was also similar. So I've been following Professor Günsirer for quite some time, actually, since my PhD days. Back then, I was interested in distributed computing a bit because I did a bit of research there as well. And as being one of the distinguished scholars in that field, obviously, I also read his articles. And actually, a good friend of mine did her PhD in his lab at some point. So I would say Ava Labs and Avalanche entered my radar quite early. So I got interested, and so basically I took also part in the test net, and then I was lucky also to participate in the pre-sale, sort of public sale. So I think that's basically how I got involved in Avalanche.
Yeah. So let's get to the questions maybe.
Sure.
We already talked a little bit about how we got into Avalanche, but what is your view on the current landscape, and maybe also focusing on AMMs and DEXs?
Yeah, sure. So we have, I think everyone would agree, we have quite a number of DEXs, AMMs at the moment. So I would say the whole scene is a bit overcrowded maybe. So my only problem, let's say, with that is that it basically fragments the liquidity on Avalanche. As we have more DEXs, it would have been maybe easier for a project or two, for a DEX or two to really stand out. If they had even more liquidity, for example, if Pangolin had even more liquidity, then maybe it would have been easier for it to climb up the DEX rankings, and probably it could have attracted also even more people to come and try out Avalanche, and they would obviously bring fresh liquidity. So that said, I think in general I support basically every legit DEX that is original and adds kind of like a unique value to Avalanche. So instead of like being just another copycat, if they can really differentiate themselves and offer something that is not there yet, I think then they would also naturally stand out. So I think probably it will. We will reach a saturation at some point. So I don't think people will appreciate just another AMM at some point, or at least I'm hoping so. But yeah, that's basically my take on that. And what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we largely agree. I also noticed it in the YouTube comments, that another AMM with a very limited unique selling proposition, people are getting a little bit less interested in them. I think a lot of their utility comes from releasing a new token that it's kind of people provide liquidity, farm a whole bunch of them, then buy the token because they tend to have better rewards pools with the token in it. And then at some point, because the point of liquidity mining is to sell the token you get, at some point you see the price kind of drop, and then because the price is kind of low, your rewards are low, and then liquidity just moves on to the next highest AMM. And so from my perspective, I'd say, if you have a great idea for an AMM, don't hesitate. I think we're all excited about good ideas, but I think it's also good for projects to think about, do they need to implement an AMM, or can they deliver their unique selling point without the AMM part? Because I think it should be doable to just put your UI and make it work with the Pangolin exchange or so. And then you also don't have to focus on developing that part, right? And then I think that would also just help us get quicker to more cool stuff. But I've no doubt it will come. And for the AMMs that exist, they all have different things on the roadmap. So I think we'll see differentiation, but the landscape is definitely getting crowded. So for new entrants, I think they're going to struggle a little bit without some very good proposition.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, for example, what Snowball Finance is doing with their, for example, stable walls. For example, it's basically also kind of like an AMM, but it's like swap mechanism. It's like between all stable coins. So I think that's a good way. It's basically just another product. So maybe instead of going to another AMM, you would choose them because they have lower slippage, for example. So it's just an example, obviously.
Yeah, and it's nice because you can earn some returns on a token that doesn't on its own create any returns without any risk of impermanent loss. So I think we have some very good projects that have taken a twist or a spin on the formula, or have come up with their own entirely unique things. And so I think, yeah, we're definitely having some very good things going on in the ecosystem there as well. But let's maybe move on to the next question, if we both agree on this. Then because I saw on Twitter, and you've tweeted about this as well, that Avalanche, some people are complaining Avalanche gets ignored by the news. Since you've also tweeted about it, I was curious to hear your opinion first.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yes. Short answer is yes, and I think there are probably there's not probably a single reason why, but I believe there are probably dozens of reasons if we had lots of time to discuss. But I think, yeah, I would say Avalanche is probably not in its rightful place at the moment. But I think it's also okay. The thing is that it just takes time, for any technology to reach a certain maturity, and no new technology or project can replace or compete with an existing tech right away. So it just needs some time to reach that maturity, and with that maturity comes also adoption. Well, obviously, crypto adoption is heavily driven by network effects. So other projects, probably you've also heard about them. They're paying influencers to basically shield their coins or tokens. So as far as I'm aware, but I haven't obviously discussed that with the Avalabs team, and actually I have no affiliation with them. So I believe they're really focusing on building first and growing naturally from there on. And I think this is a bit unique, because people are arguing that we're in a bull run, so we should be maybe doing mass marketing and really focusing on getting the value up as much as possible. Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. It makes sense, but I think the way that they are aiming it is basically it should be a natural way. So you just develop new dApps, new decentralized applications that would attract new people, and then through them we could basically grow and become much more noticeable basically in the whole space. So I think a good example of that is this Spore project. So nothing I say is a financial advice. So I'm just trying to give an example. So Spore project basically brought lots of attention in the past week by basically making users of Binance Smart Chain come over to Pangolin and Avalanche, and with that they also brought lots of liquidity with them, and that actually in the end made Pangolin break records in terms of daily and weekly volume. So I think this is great, and I think a few such stories or such such examples will then eventually cause like a snowballing network effect, in a sense that if we have one or two or even more such use cases and projects that are bridging different blockchains, or just making people at least come over and try Avalanche, I think this will then do the marketing in a sense for Avalanche.
Yeah.
And what is your view on that?
So you said a lot of things, and a lot of things that I also have things to say about. So I'm trying to I will try and answer or address all the specific parts. Starting maybe just with why I think that Avalanche is getting ignored. I will say ignored. I do think there is a little bit of perception bias. Of course, we're living and breathing AVAX a lot of the time, but for people who are outside of our ecosystem, of course, they have limited time. You notice also the more interest comes from, not the crypto industry, but more the traditional finance block industry. they generally have a pretty poor idea of even what Ethereum and Bitcoin do. So for them to know about Avalanche, I think, we are expecting a bit much still. And I know this is the same for other projects as well. I know that other projects also often feel like they get ignored. It's just because they feel they have a solution for the problem. And that's just not always mentioned in every article. That said, of course, the people that are in cryptocurrencies, and especially the ones that have the expertise to write about it, probably also have a stake in certain products and certain projects. So I wouldn't be surprised if either consciously or subconsciously there is some bias to include or not include, or just a dislike against some projects, why it doesn't get included. And then to move that into what you said about marketing through the AVA Labs team. My personal opinion is that they should not be concerned with price at all. Of course, it is an indicator of in a way of trust in the projects, which do watch it, but like don't pump it for no reason. The price, in my opinion, I mean, we know that within the cryptocurrency space, a lot of price action is also just driven by speculation, right? But in the end, price has to come from utility, and utility needs to be, in my opinion, what the technology team should be focusing on. So I don't care too much, but what I would like to see is just a lot of tools for the community to help them spread the word and to help them organize events and give them the creative assets that they need to make something cool. I think that would be very helpful. But yet don't release like announcement of announcements. We're gonna have this big thing coming up and then not delivering. I'd rather you deliver and tell us last minute than tell us 3 months in advance and hype it up and then we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I think Spore, one very good example indeed of bringing users onto the ecosystem. I also saw on a webinar with the Zero team recently, where they showed the difference between doing a transaction on Ethereum and a transaction on Avalanche, which I think I felt that so strongly because I don't have much of an Ethereum background. The Avalanche public sale was one of the first instances where I had to use Ethereum, and it was actually for me a relatively large amount because I just wasn't used to it at all. And I remember running out of gas on like the first 3 attempts, and I was like, what the hell? It's super stressful. Oh, wow. And then I just said, I can just up the gas limit, but not up the gas price. Well, of course, at the time, the gas price just peaked, and I was just looking at it, and it was just not going anywhere. I was like, what? This sucks. And nowadays, of course, you have Avalanche, and it's all instant, and it's super nice. And that's also, you were talking kind of about the technology maturity curve. And if you're ready for a spicy opinion, I think Ethereum is pretty much at the top. Because so my argument for that is, crypto, of course, was partly meant to take out the middle person, right? To bring a completely efficient monetary system, specifically more Bitcoin maybe than Ethereum. Yeah. But also definitely part for Ethereum. But nowadays, we see with the miner extractable value, they've basically just created a middleman that's super powerful. Of course, there are technically different pools, but there are definitely pools that are very powerful and control together a large share of it. The total pool of transactions they can push through every time is just so low that we're all bidding against each other just to have our transaction registered. So for me, kind of like seeing improvements to Ethereum is very much like people putting a faster horse or more horses in front of a carriage. Well, at some point, I do hope they'll switch to the automobile. But that's my spicy opinion. I like I said, I don't have an Ethereum background, so I don't have any emotional attachment to it, and I don't have much attachment to the projects that are on it. There's definitely other good reasons to use it. But for me, every time I use it, and I recognize it so strongly in what the Zero guy said, like every time you use it, just holds your heart, and you can feel your stomach acid getting a little bit like, like just looking at it, like, is it going to go through? Is this transaction going to go now, or is it going to go in 7 hours? Am I going to run out of gas and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, going back to Ethereum from Avalanche is just super painful. I mean, especially if you're someone who is not a whale, or who doesn't send thousands of dollars around, then it's also super expensive. Not only slow but expensive. But I mean, that said, I think Ethereum is great, and I think Avalanche has the early Ethereum vibe as well, in a sense. I think that's also what I like about it. So being happy, I'm quite happy to be part of that early on. But yeah, I completely agree with what you said. Obviously, some people, compare actually, Binance Smart Chain and how fast it is, and how cheap it is, and so on. Yeah, so I think decentralization is probably the biggest selling point here. But I don't know whether all end users are, or whether they really care about that, because I think Avalanche, with over 900, validators there, it's just a more decentralized. Definitely, I mean, it's not totally controlled by Binance or something like that, on the Binance Smart Chain. But yeah, so I think it's a bit, up to the people what they really prefer. I mean, if you're trusting Binance so much, then obviously it's okay to use their smart chain as well. But if you really think about decentralization and removing the middleman, removing that actually trust, and interacting with trustless systems, then I think Avalanche is the right place. And I think we will still, I mean, despite the success of BSC and so, we'll see definitely, Avalanche getting a larger share of the pie, of the DeFi pie, at least, as we go forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And yeah, Binance Chain, I think, because it is such an easy on-ramp for most people, I think a lot of people start on Binance, and then, they can transfer the coins. They can pay either $30 for an Ethereum transfer, or like a few cents for a BSC transfer. And then I think that's also just one way how a lot of people end up on there. But in terms of technology, it's not actually that innovative. I think it's mostly just the validators that have been reduced drastically. So I do think we already saw a couple of weeks ago where PancakeSwap was telling everyone on Twitter, no, you have to up your gas price. They're also gonna run into issues, and I think that Avalanche is better suited in a way, because we are the technology that we have just allows for much more transaction throughput. I think that's gonna be one big differentiator. That is gonna, the more people come into crypto, and the more Binance Chain is gonna also slow down as a result of it. That's gonna help us a lot. And then I do think
for sure.
And then I do think a better on-ramp would also be very good. But the decentralization.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Avalanche is great, but obviously, there are things, there's room for improvement. Let's put it that way. And definitely, onboarding, or just like other things that they need to be, they will get there for sure. It's just that you cannot be such a young project and have everything figured out already. So it will take time. So that's why I'm not really concerned. It's just that obviously, if you are too sensitive about the price, and if you'd like to I don't know, 100 or 200 whatever x your initial investment, and then obviously you might be a bit more concerned. But yeah, to me it's I mean, everyone says it's to me as well, it's a marathon. So I'm just taking my time and basically watching it grow, basically.
Yeah, no, and exactly. I have to say I have the same philosophy, and like I prefer to have the good tech and taking a bit longer. I'm not a trader. I know if I trade, I'm just going to make mistakes. I'm going to sell the top and buy the bottom, or the other way around rather. Maybe I get lucky, maybe I don't. But I think my strength is also just in identifying just what has good potential and just holding it out and being patient there. And of course, when you see Doge go up like ridiculous amounts, you're like, oh. But at the same time, I'm like, well, okay, you know what? Never mind. It's just not for me. The risk, I'm risk averse in that way. But I do think that's the to come back onto like the on-ramp and onboarding. I do think that's why Spore, for example, is such a big tool in the AVAX arsenal, and we're so lucky to have them as well. They got so many people on BSC interested and basically they just tell them, yeah, but you get more rewards if you're an Avalanche. So do you want to move your tokens over? I think that's really cool.
And I think to me that's still like part of the story. It's basically still the retail part, like which is great that people are recognizing this and coming over. But at some point, companies, like firms, large firms, small firms, they might actually come over as well, come over to Avalanche as well. And I mean, probably we have a few more questions, and I'll mention the subnets in there. But yeah, I think this is just like maybe one side of the coin, and on the other side we have a lot of things that maybe you and I are not really aware of, as we're not part of the Labs team. But I'm pretty sure they are working on that really hard to also bring more players and big actors from the industries, from different industries.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to assume that the company that basically still runs the technology or develops the technology, that they're very much focused on bringing on the big users, because they can really take their time to explain, what's the value proposition. They really know the tech, they know the roadmap, and then I think for us in the community, it's good that we open anyone who wants to develop on Avalanche. We open them with open arms, as long as they're not rock pulling anything. But
yeah,
and
exactly.
I do think that the Avalanche community is really good at that. Just anything that launches, I see just a lot of enthusiasm for it. I also find that the projects work together reasonably well. Of course, there's a few rivalries maybe here and there, but overall they work together really well. They spot weaknesses occasionally in each other, and they
Yeah, I
fix it
mean,
for each other.
to some certain extent, that was really a pleasant surprise to me, like how different projects, started, as you said, like collaborating with each other, checking each other's, smart contracts, looking for bugs or potential issues, and then, actually collaborating, like creating pools together, or, doing a bit of marketing for each other. So that's great, actually. That's also it's such a young community, and seeing these like good synergies basically come out and help develop the Avalanche ecosystem even further. That's really great. That's a very good point you mentioned there.
Yeah. So maybe I think we can talk about this for a long time, but we're going to brush over all the questions and then technically have sort of answered them. So maybe go back to a little bit more a direct question.
Sure.
What project or concept would be a great addition to the Avalanche ecosystem, according to you?
Yeah. So I think so to me, Avalanche ecosystem is not limited to the C chain. I mean, I think C chain is already amazing. So the current DeFi is basically set up there. So anyone basically who can bring over a DeFi project or a Lego piece that can basically complement what we have already here, that would be definitely a great addition. And I think the initial focus definitely should be there, because if you bring in like a very successful Ethereum project and just put it on a more decentralized, faster and more secure chain, then it would definitely make a difference. I mean, you don't have to do too much. It's just that if people come and use it, they will realize it very quickly. I mean, you've seen it with Pangolin and with others already, like in terms of Texas. So I think DeFi and C chain is one thing, but what I really would like to highlight is are the subnets. So to me, I don't know how much people know actually about subnets, but to me, those are. I mean, this is really the next big thing, and people, I'm not so sure whether they're fully aware of the potential of subnets, because if you have a project that has some function, it can basically generate a lot of transactions, a lot of volume and whatnot. You can just create a subnet. You can convince and incentivize validators and their delegators to come over and basically start securing your subnet, and then those people can also have they could be making another income actually just by managing these things or by just delegating. And to me, that's like a natural way of scaling things, like a functional scaling. And even you could have like permissioned subnets for banks or whatnot, and then permissionless systems, subnets as well. So I think the next projects should really focus on building on top of a subnet. So they should have, in a sense, their own blockchain. And so like imagine having whatever Binance or another next big financial product or platform running as a subnet on I don't know, on Avalanche. I think that would be a great addition. And if you could make the user experience, the UI, and on-ramping and everything as good as a central exchange or centralized exchange, I think that would be one good addition, definitely. On the other hand, obviously, as a short-term addition, which would be really useful, is to actually have the connection to these centralized exchanges, like via the C chain, so that we can have more liquidity coming over. And with the latest token launch of Verso on Gate.io, I think we have established the first connection. So it's just a matter of time before maybe pangolins, zeros of this world, of the Avalanche world are listed actually maybe on a SEX. So we'll see. So what do you think? What should be the what could be a great addition to the ecosystem?
Well, I just love hearing you. You've got so many ideas, so it's hard for me to get anything in between. But I'll just add one more thing. That I know that this is actually something that's being worked on. But I would love to see, now that we have so many AMMs and so many opportunities to yield farm and everything, and people moving, and basically we've already with Snowball Finance and with Yield Direct, we've already optimized kind of that the auto compounding. We don't have to do it ourselves anymore. To build on top of that, I think it would be quite interesting to also have an application that just kind of moves your money around. Of course, that's going to be a bit complex because how much risk is a certain pool. Maybe an API is very high, but likely sometimes it's just because the risk is higher in that pool. But I'm curious to see if anybody can make a really good kind of auto investor, auto yield optimizer. Curious if that's possible, but I think if it's possible anywhere, it's Avalanche, because it is doable to just quickly move funds around. You don't have to wait 20 minutes to get a deposit. It doesn't cost 30 euros every time you want to move a pool.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah.
I think
that's great. Sorry, please.
No, go ahead.
No, that's great. I mean, in my wild, let's say, view of Avalanche in the future, I think all these tools, like Uniswaps of this world or Aves and so on, they could be even like separate subnets. Why not? And then to an end user, it shouldn't really matter. So you should be able to put your money in a vault that is basically picking up the best strategy, given the circumstances and given the APYs and whatnot. And you should really sit back and enjoy. I mean, obviously, to me, that's an ultimate dream of any crypto enthusiast, to basically get basic, in a sense, maybe basic income via this passive stream of money, in a sense. So yeah, I completely agree. But I'm kind of like a subnet maximalist. So I really like the idea of breaking up things, just letting them have their own rules, own toolkits, and let them basically define how their blockchain or subnet should look like. So I think with the obviously with the underlying security and decentralization and fast transactions of Avalanche. So I think that world is super exciting, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, makes me think of one more thing that may be useful. I'm not sure how easy it would be to implement, but of course, the more subnets we're gonna have, likely you're gonna have to do like we do now, a cross-chain transfer from X to C, and the more subnets we're gonna get, the more often you're gonna have to do that. I wonder if it would then be also possible to make like kind of a vault, say like this application, this smart contract, or this entity, this holds like a bunch of AVAX for a bunch of people, and it has registered kind of who has credit where, and then you don't actually have to move your funds from C to X or whichever new subnet, but you just click it and it goes to that wallet or vault or whatever, and it just deducts from your balances and says, oh, use some of the funds that we have on this chain, and then they move funds around en masse. Of course, that does make it more centralized again, and I'm not sure if that's something we want. But for the user experience, it might be interesting. But
no, I agree. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Yeah, obviously, you don't want to have a custodian in between or middleman who does these things. But if that is decentralized, then yeah, why not? I mean, I think that could be quite a useful thing. I mean, I think it's still, I mean, we have to wait and see how fast, those cross-chain transfers will be once we have, many subnets. I think, I mean, theoretically, it should be very, very fast because, we have this P chain where all the validators are, and, that network is quite dense in the sense that you can basically just communicate with another validator who is, which is basically validating another subnet. So I think the communication should be fast. So I mean, I'm just interested in seeing that implemented, and I think to me the experience of the end user would be much more interesting than the underlying technology, because I think, well, tech-wise we'll get there for sure. It's just that can you the users of Binance, Coinbase come over and use Avalanche and all the dApps on it in a kind of like a seamless way, like you don't have to really relearn everything basically.
Yeah.
If we can achieve that, then it's to me it's game over.
Yeah, just because I think we will lose a few users just in complexity of cross-chain transfers. Maybe instead of having like some central entity that gives stuff around, maybe just implement some sort of function where if you say pay on this subnet, that it just calls your exchange and just adds the cross-chain transaction to it or so. Like you keep your funds in exchange, and just whenever you click, it just does the cross-chain. And then if you're a user that's going to use the subchain a lot, you just transfer it, so you don't have to pay this cross-chain fee the whole time. Though that's not a high fee either. But
yeah. I mean, imagine like even for for non-crypto people. I mean, if you have a bank account, if your bank is somehow tapped into this decentralized finance world, and if it can like use stable vault or another pangolin pool, whatnot, if it can access on behalf of you, for example, then it's also done. I mean, we're there. It's basically the bank or whatever whomever you trust is acting on behalf of you, and you're actually kind of like bridging this traditional finance with decentralized finance, and that's actually, I think it should be the ultimate goal. I mean, everyone who has who doesn't have access to any financial system should have access first, but also cross people from cross systems, different financial systems like traditional and decentralized, should also have access to all the products offered in the other world basically. So this will happen for sure. It's going to happen. It's just with everything, as I just mentioned, it just needs a bit of maturity and time, and for sure we'll get there. But the road might be a bit bumpy, but we'll get there.
I mean, it's easy to forget that mainnet launched not a year ago. The sale was not a year ago, even at this point, I think. So we're moving fast already, but we just need time. I think there's so many good ideas just between you and me, and probably many, many more within the community. But it would be very cool if people that are not very interested in technology, but do know just how to do internet banking or so, that at some point they click a button and this is actually going through the blockchain, you just don't see it. Exactly. I think that would be if we do that, then we onboard like a huge part of the population, and probably an even larger part than that of the total wealth in the world. Okay, let's maybe move on to a final question before we close. Just your thoughts on the Avalanche community and crypto Twitter in general.
Yeah, sure. So I think the community is growing at a really high pace. And I mean, personally, I'm very fortunate to be part of it. I mean, I saw my Twitter account also go up crazy in terms of like the attention it drew, or it draws actually from people. So I'm really happy with that, obviously. But what I'm more happier is that basically how different DeFi projects, how a new entrant into Avalanche community tries to help another project or another person, or basically try to learn and grow together. And to me, that's probably the most beautiful side of my experience so far. I mean, yes, crypto Twitter is okay. It's fun. It's nice. But I think, seeing the Avalanche community grow, and, like, I don't know, like all these projects basically helping each other, and, trying to, they all have the same goal. They all want, Avalanche to be successful, and also long term, like it's a long term goal of being successful. I mean, so it's a great, it's been a great ride so far to me. How about you? What do you think about the community and the, let's say, crypto Twitter?
No, I absolutely agree, and I so much of what you just said, and just to give an example, I think let's start with just how I kind of came into it, because of course I was tracking that AVAX sticker on Twitter, and then following the conversation a little bit. But then at some point when Pangolin launched, and then a lot of people were having issues with the bridge, I was like, you can just also just take your AVAX from Binance, do C-chain, and just buy your Ether or whatever you want to do on Pangolin. That's possible now. Some people have transferred it. And I was like, that's a great message, because this is going to help people, because I see so many people struggle. And then I was like, well, you can post it in Telegram once, but then probably have to post it every 10 minutes, because the volume of questions at that time was just huge.
Yeah.
I put it on YouTube. I was like, well, if anybody sees this, maybe if I'm lucky, if someone Googles help transfer funds to Pangolin, it will come up. And then, it's got quite a lot of views, and people share it amongst themselves, and there's so many positive comments saying, this really helped, and do you know how to solve this, or can you talk about this? And then kind of just gets sucked in a little bit more and more. And I am terminally online, so I follow a lot of the Twitter discourse as well, so I tend to be pretty up to date on a lot of stuff. So that was really cool, and just for myself as well, just a very warm welcome within the Avalanche Twitter community. And then I think what's really cool about the overall community as well is that, in a way, we're kind of this decentralized group of people also coming together to build Avalanche, because I think that's something that all of us do. Also, just the first time I came into the Discord for Snowball Finance, when it was just only the bare smart contract, and maybe just the bare bones UI. It was also just, a few people talking to each other, being like, hey, can we do this? Oh, maybe I can do this. Oh, I can work on this for you. And I think Snowball Finance is one of those projects that has really come up with just people coming in and pitching in their own contributions and their own strength, and also now spreading out again to build other stuff that's really cool, and taking other roles within the community. So I think we're seeing currently, if you're part of the Avalanche community, I think you're already playing a great role, and just connecting everyone with each other, and encouraging each other. And I think that's just, it's really good to see. It makes me really happy every day to log into Avalanche Twitter. And since I'm terminally online, I refresh stuff, and sometimes there's nothing new. I'm like, oh no, I want more opinions from you guys.
Yeah, likewise.
So for now, also, of course, my DMs are still open. We get a lot of questions ranging from, what's my address, to how do I find my wallet address, to more complex, what do you think about this project? And that's really fun right now. I do think that maybe at some point, because of course we are all here expecting Avalanche to grow, that maybe at some point it becomes impossible to answer all the questions. But for now, I think we're very early, and just really happy to have the atmosphere we have.
I agree. At some point, I think there is a bit of a learning curve, especially, I mean, let's say 2 different curves, right? Or ramps that you have to basically leave behind. I think the first one is, if you're a non-crypto user, everything is super new and it's not really Avalanche related. But if you're coming from another chain, or if you just bought something, or if you just use a centralized exchange, then obviously setting up your MetaMask and getting used to this new world of interacting with DeFi and so on. So that could be a bit difficult maybe to get used to. But I think given enough time and enough education, and at some point it will become natural. And I think the whole community is really helpful in that. People are I see also on Discord and Telegram telling each other what needs to be done. I mean, because of some project launches, people learned how to interact with the contracts directly. And I think that's, I mean, you cannot get a better learning experience than like putting real money and trying to trying to interact with the system at at its bare bone almost. So so that's definitely it's a great thing, but there are different difficulties. And as we as the community grows, I'm sure all these things will get also more mature. So you would have really good documentation and videos, and I think you're doing great in that sense. With your videos, basically educating people. So I think these are really highly appreciated, and I think going forward, these efforts will also make the project, make the whole Avalanche community and the larger projects actually much more successful. So so it's, well, I would say it's a great time to be in these projects. So I think the future is very bright, and yeah, let's see what it holds.
Absolutely, yeah. So nothing is financial advice, but I think if you're in Avalanche now, you're early, and I think we've got a very bright future ahead. Yeah. And maybe that's a good moment to also just close on some final thoughts on Avalanche and its future.
Yeah. So so where are we now? So I think we are approaching like 2 million transactions on the C chain. Almost 100,000 wallet addresses have been created. So there is a tremendous growth on the C chain. But don't forget about the subnets, because I think they will really play a very interesting and powerful role in the coming months. So yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, you see, I can't really stop talking about it, and even tweeting about it. So I'm super excited, and I think it's a good time also to to learn some of the mistakes we make, and think also about how we can improve things, but also support every developer who has a good intent, basically. And we'll get there. I mean, it just takes time. I mean, we're not even. I mean, Avalanche is not even a year old, as you said. So it's still super early. So we'll get there for sure.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I don't even have much to add. I think just we are super early, and there is so much creativity within. I think both Avalanche probably themselves, and also just the community thinking of things that, oh, maybe we can use this. Oh, maybe we need this. And of course, every day in crypto is a year in a human life almost. But so things can look like they're not going very fast, but there's some apps that are just a month old where you're like, wait, I feel like they've been around forever. So I think that plays in perception a little bit, but I have no doubt personally, of course, that we're gonna go to very good places, and many more exciting things to come. I think the main catalyst, if there's any, is gonna be just getting, if users get one reason to just, oh, this is definitely why we need Avalanche above anything else. I think that if you ever reach that moment, then you're too late to buy in.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll see about that. Maybe that's a good moment to close on.
Sure.
Thank you, Omer, so much for your time. I think we've probably been talking for a decently long time, like you said. Right. I think both of us could talk for a long time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, maybe at some point, if there's enough request and wish from the community, maybe we could have this repeated talks and chats every now and then.
Yeah, so absolutely, guys, you hear it. If you want to see more of Omer, then please ask a couple more questions in the comments, and I'm sure he is very active on Twitter. So if he's now doesn't answer them there already and spoils my video, then I'm sure we can get him back one more time. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.